As an employee of a financial institution, you have both an ethical and legal responsibility to protect the privacy and security of your customers' non-public personal information. All consumers place great value on the privacy and security of their personal information, and several sections of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act of 1999 set legal standards on how this information is safeguarded by financial institutions. The GLBA defines financial institutions as companies that are significantly engaged in financial activities. To be significantly engaged, the institution must enter into formal arrangements with consumers and do so on an ongoing or regular basis. Services that make an institution significantly engaged in financial activities include, but are not limited to, obtaining a home mortgage, opening a credit card account, automobile leases, real estate services, debt collection, financial advice, and tax preparation services. Non-public personal information, or NPI, is any personally identifiable financial information that's collected by a financial institution while providing a financial product or service. NPI can come from three different sources: information received when a customer applies for a product or service, like name, address, income, or social security number; information received from a customer's transactions, such as account numbers, payment history, credit card purchases, loan balances, and even the fact that he or she is your customer; information received in connection with the product or service, such as court records; information that's publicly available or information that the customer could make private but has not done so, like a phone number, is not protected under the law. There are different obligations under the law depending on whether an individual is considered a consumer or a customer. A consumer is anyone who obtains financial products or services for personal or family use. Businesses cannot be consumers. A consumer becomes a customer when the financial arrangement becomes formal and ongoing. For example, individuals who use a bank's cash machine are consumers, but individuals who open a checking account with that same bank are considered customers. The GLBA has three sections that safeguard NPI: the Financial Privacy Rule, the Safeguard Rule, and the Pretexting provisions. The Financial Privacy Rule section of the law details privacy notices. Privacy notices are written notices that describe privacy policies and practices. Financial institutions are required to give these notices to customers and sometimes consumers. The privacy notice must explain what information is collected from the consumer, where the consumer's information will be shared, how the consumer's information will be used, the consumer's right to opt out of information being shared with unaffiliated third parties. All customers must receive a privacy notice at the time the business relationship is established, or in some cases shortly thereafter, and annually as long as the relationship continues. If the institution shares customer NPI with unaffiliated third parties, they must also include an opt-out notice. Financial institutions that share NPI with unaffiliated third parties must also give their consumers a privacy notice and opt-out notice. If they do not share NPI with unaffiliated third parties, then they have no obligation under the law. Opt-out notices must clearly detail the individual's right to demand that their information is not shared with unaffiliated third parties. Additionally, they must provide a reasonable way to opt out, such as a phone number or a form that can be mailed or turned in directly at the institution. Lastly, they must be given a reasonable amount of time to opt out. Financial institutions cannot discriminate against consumers based on whether or not they opted out of information sharing with unaffiliated third parties. If the privacy policy changes, the consumer must be notified about and accept the new policy. The consumer has the right to opt out each time the policy changes. When unaffiliated third parties use non-public personal information, they must adhere to the consumer's acceptance terms detailed in the original agreement. Part of the safeguard rule requires that financial institutions develop a written information security plan. The plan must describe how the institution has prepared itself to protect private, non-public information. Describe how it plans to continue to protect this information. Assign at least one employee to manage information safeguards. Complete a risk analysis for each department that handles private information. Develop a program to secure information and monitor and test this program on a regular basis. Adjust safeguards when there are changes in how information is collected, stored, and used. When financial institutions hire service providers or contractors, they must maintain the same safeguards as the organization itself. Financial organizations should oversee their service providers to ensure they're following the plan and safeguarding information adequately. It's the job of financial employees to protect their customers' private information. To help financial institutions, the FTC has provided some best practices to safeguard NPI. Keep rooms and file cabinets where records are kept locked when not in use. Secure laptops, PDAs, cell phones, or other mobile devices that contain or are used to access personal information when not in use. Encrypt customer information that's stored on devices so if it's stolen, it's difficult to access. Limit information access to what employees need to know. Employees that don't need to know any personal information should not have access to it. Employees who only need to know some information should have their access limited to that specific information. Employees should use password-activated screensavers to lock computers after a short amount of inactivity. Never insert USBs from unfamiliar sources into computers. USBs are often used to infect computers and systems with malware that steals information. Place computers and servers that store NPI in a physically secure location and protect them with strong passwords. Create strong passwords for access to NPI. Currently, security experts recommend using passwords at least 14 to 16 characters long, containing random capital letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols, and be changed every 60 days. Never share passwords, post them publicly, or store them in obvious locations like an unlocked desk drawer. In some cases, financial institutions have a critical business reason to access NPI outside of their secure facility. In these cases, it's critical that the following practices are followed. Never log directly into a public Wi-Fi network. They're not secure for personal or business use. The only way to use public Wi-Fi is with a VPN. VPNs, or virtual private networks, increase security by masking the initial IP address and encrypting all online data transfers. Secure home networks with the same high standards as business networks. Routers must be protected with strong, unique passwords that are at least 14 random characters in length with capital letters, numbers, and symbols. Never use the default password that came with the device. Always use WP2 encryption with AES. WP2 is the best encryption available, and AES is the protocol used by the Department of Defense to encrypt sensitive data. These encryption options are easy to find on your computer's security settings. Never loan a device used to access NPI to a friend or family member, and keep devices out of view and secured when not in use. Guests in your home should use a guest network and not the network you use to access NPI. Information disposal is a critical aspect of security. The FTC recommends the following practices: burn, pulverize, or shred papers containing customer information so that the information cannot be read or reconstructed. Destroy or erase data prior to disposing of computers, disks, CDs, magnetic tapes, hard drives, laptops, PDAs, cell phones, or any other electronic media or hardware containing customer information. Keep an activity log on your network to detect improper use or theft of information. Access from unfamiliar locations or unexpectedly large transfers of data are signals of a possible breach. Use theft detection tools such as intrusion detection systems or the insertion and monitoring of dummy accounts. Pretexting or social engineering occurs when criminals fraudulently attempt to steal NPI under false pretenses. Criminals use public information found on websites and in social media to impersonate people like company executives, employees of an affiliated company, or the customers themselves to trick employees into divulging private, non-public personal information. Common pretexting schemes involve a criminal doing the following: requesting NPI by impersonating a customer, impersonating a high-level executive who needs money wired or a list of NPI, impersonating an internal or external IT employee and asking for access to computer or passwords, spoofed emails using forged from, sender, or reply to addresses. A spoofed email will look identical to that of a colleague, vendor, customer, or even a company executive. Phishing, which is when criminals attempt to collect information on a fraudulent website designed to look like a legitimate one. Applying for products or services on the web via the mail or on the phone for a financial product or service using stolen NPI. Attempting to steal NPI by impersonating a fiancé, spouse, or pretending to have a power of attorney. Impersonating a customer with an emergency to create panic and cause an employee to break procedure. Be aware and prepared for pretexting schemes. Always follow company procedures on NPI disclosure. Never send NPI via email. Never give strangers the benefit of the doubt. Never open an attachment or follow a link in an email you weren't expecting. If you have concerns about an email, forward it to your IT department. Take extra care to follow procedures when customers are in a hurry, angry, or have an emergency. Criminals will incorporate threats, fear, and a sense of urgency in an attempt to manipulate the user into acting promptly. When a breach occurs, take immediate action to minimize the damage. If a server or computer has been compromised, immediately take the device offline. Preserve and review data and programs that have information on how the breach may have occurred. If necessary, employ security professionals to help assess the damage. Notify customers if there's a significant risk of financial harm or if it's required by state law, and notify law enforcement of possible criminal activity. Notify the credit bureaus and other businesses that could be affected by criminal activity. There are severe consequences for violating the GLBA. Violators are subject to both civil and criminal penalties, including fines and imprisonment. Financial institutions are subject to civil penalties up to $100,000 per violation. Officers and directors may personally face fines of up to $10,000 per violation and imprisonment for up to 5 years. The Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act was passed to protect the personal, non-public personal information of the customers of financial institutions. Institutions are required to follow the provisions of the Act, but compliance is not just a legal imperative. Organizations who are compliant benefit from increased customer trust and loyalty.